This is the story of a journey. A journey to a place far away from what we know. A place that allows new experiences. A place that has never before been flown with a paraglider. We are a group of professional paraglider pilots looking for adventure on a corner of this earth yet to be explored. A place without maps or weather forecasts. A place that would bring out the pioneer in us. A place that reduces paragliding to what it once was. This place is Soqطrى, an island that lies halfway between Somalia and Yemen, directly in the notorious pirate-infested waters of the Gulf of Aden. It is most definitely an island that time forgot, an island known to the few who have been there as the Galapagos of the Indian Ocean. Arabs, Asians and Indians all used the island as a base, trading in incense during classical pagan times. More recently, biologists discovered its rich biodiversity, which led to the island being made a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve in 2003. Soqطrى derives its name not from the Greeks, as once thought, but from the old Indian Sanskrit meaning the island of bliss. Scientists believe, due to its isolation from the African mainland for over 7 million years, that the island, like the Galapagos, is teeming with over 700 extremely rare species of flora and fauna. A full third of which are endemic. They are to be found nowhere else on Earth. The island's history is riddled with myth and legend. Marco Polo reports tales of island magicians with the power to influence the weather, creating storms and sinking ships. We attempted to prepare ourselves as best we could, but with little information we were forced to be resourceful. Nevertheless, we set off into the night, full of hope and expectation. After our arrival on the mainland in Yemen, civil unrest led to the cancellation of the only onward plane to Soqطrى, leaving us stranded for 2 days without plan or agenda. Sun, sea, and endless white sand. Our obvious conclusion was to go flying. Soldiers looked on, at first skeptical, then pleased for their distraction from an otherwise precarious situation. We played endlessly, and as the sun dropped over the horizon for the last time, we felt just a little more prepared for this island, which was to be as enchanting as it was alien. Our first impressions of the island were perhaps not as expected. And nervously we stared out the window, hoping that these ruins would soon be replaced with something a little more optically pleasing. We were not to be disappointed. The nights were often as beautiful as the days, and we could have laid there for all eternity, watching time pass, dreaming with open eyes of the ever-nearing adventure of the next day. We were allowed to be boys, and as boys we had regained a freedom that had often been lost in our other world. We never missed a sunrise, and with head torches glued above our weary eyes and gliders on our back, we made our way up the steepest of dunes, knowing that our tracks would soon be erased by the wind, extinguishing all trace of our existence. We were completely alone in this wildest of places as the sun came over the horizon. There was a strange stillness in the group. The hairs were standing up on the back of my neck as the Indian Ocean crashed beneath us in a myriad of turquoise and white. In the 1st century AD, Socotra appears in Greek navigation aids as Dioscoridu, meaning the island of God's children. Romans, Greeks, Arabs, English, the Portuguese, even the Russians wanted to own, occupy and rule this small piece of earth. We sat for hours in the warm glow of the fire, listening to our guides share stories and legends from long forgotten times. But what were our experiences worth if we were not able to share them? We wanted to show them their home in a way that they had never seen it before. We wanted them to understand the origin of our smiles as we land back on the beach each evening. Instinctively, they gave us their trust. But sometimes this trust can simply not be exchanged for a moment. For one with the endless confidence that only comes with youth, it was a warning. For the other, a test in his faith. For most of us, it would be time to pack up and call it a day. But there are some that train incessantly for these moments, fanatically waiting for the challenge that will somehow test their abilities. These are the moments that push the very boundaries of what's possible within our sport. But it is easy to forget the long, steep path of dedication and training needed in order to play the game with such ease at his highest of levels. To venture out into this remote part of the ocean also requires concentration and discipline. Only the most informed biologists know what swims in these waters. We heard stories of jellyfish the size of dustbin lids, and the slightest flash of a dorsal fin made our hearts beat faster. And this was just below the water. Socotra is also a popular refueling stop for Somalian pirates on their way back from a hijacking on the high seas. Used to no more than the odd fishing boat, the children couldn't believe their eyes as they watched the kite. dance across the water. From this impressive strip of coast, the Dixon Plateau is clearly visible and marks the clear geological boundary to the highlands of the interior. As we climb its steep flanks, we have the feeling that we have just traveled to another era of Earth's history. 7 million years of geological isolation has led to the most hauntingly weird flora. Dragon blood trees cling to the cliffs like flying saucers, while other strange plants sink their roots directly into the rocks. A main part of the population living here are semi-nomadic pastoralists, living from goats, camel breeding, and date palm cultivation. Where the plateau drops off into the sea, we find the largest natural caves in the whole of the Middle East. Some are known to have a depth of over 7 kilometers. From the air, we could see clearly a way into one of the bigger openings. We entered the cave, passing stalactites hung at the entrance, like sentinels guarding a hidden treasure. We were soon to witness a beauty within the darkness that few could have imagined. An amphitheater as big as a concert hall, with its own organ as old as the earth on which we stood. We were to leave this place in a way that we had not entered. As we laid out our gliders at the mouth of the cave, we were not sure if it would work or if it was really safe. We could hear the wind whistling up the face, but in the shelter of the opening, there wasn't a zephyr to rustle our gliders. Just a few steps, and we would leave the darkness behind. And as our eyes adjusted to the light, we knew once again we were exactly where we wanted to be. Hadibo is Soqotra's capital and is completely unrepresentative of the rest of the island. The partly paved dirt roads are not more than a dumping ground for rubbish. Hygiene is poor, and only a little more than half the children go to school. The houses are of simple stone build and are in a distinct state of disrepair. Goats, dogs, and other animals roam the streets, their excrement mixing with stagnant water, creating a hive for bacteria and disease. In the small markets which line the streets, locals offer their produce, like they have since ancient times. People here survive primarily from what the island offers them: goat meat, honey, and an abundance of fish. With the hum of the outboard in our ears, we pushed out further and further into open water. Our guides assured us that we were not in danger. But as they attentively checked the horizon for boats, an atmosphere of uncertainty was plainly evident amongst the group. Fishing was the obvious distraction. And with the line tied around his toes, our guide pulled one impressive fish after the other into our small wooden boat. For the locals, dolphins are a sign of good luck, and they would often accompany us alongside our boat, playing in the wake. Sometimes it was necessary to leave the group in order to find oneself. Not to be lonely, but alone. Only with a precision that comes from years of dedication can we master what seems to most as impossible. It would have nearly been an offense to not leave our gliders for some hours to immerse ourselves in this other, extraordinary element that surrounds the island. Once again, we found ourselves on this very same dawn pilgrimage we had undertaken some days before. Our plan was to use both wind and rise and thermal air to carry us to new heights, Heights that would allow us a glimpse over the great ridge, which had until now acted like a curtain, shielding us from what lay beyond. No weather forecasts, no maps. No one telling you how it is or how it will be. Just friends looking out for one another, following their hearts while feeding their souls. We had traveled a long way to remember how it is to feel whole. Ever so gently, the air carried us higher and higher. Sand, coast and cliffs merged as the ridge passed below us. As we reached 1,000 meters, the island opened up in front of us. On one side, the massive expanse of the Indian Ocean. On the other, this island that we had become so fond of. Saturated with memories that we would take home with us, but never quite be able to explain to our loved ones. Memories of an island, of smiles and sandy colors, of breezes carried over oceans. Memories that will give us strength when the sun doesn't shine quite so brightly.